My husband took $25,000 from our savings to buy his spoiled sister expensive jewelry without telling me. When I confronted him, he called me a stupid housewife. Now he's desperate because he needs money and begs me to return. But I filed for divorce and left him destroyed. I'm 30 years old. I'm between jobs right now. And like 6 months ago, my life literally fell apart because of a decision my husband, well, ex-husband now, made without even asking me. And when I say it fell apart, I'm not exaggerating. Because I ended up getting divorced after 5 years of marriage over something that, looking back, I should have seen coming from a long time ago. The thing is that Jonathan was always super close to his family, especially to his younger sister Sarah. And at first I thought it was sweet. You know, a protective brother and all that. But over time I realized it wasn't protection. It was extreme enabling. Like she could do whatever she wanted and he would always defend her no matter what. I met Jonathan when I was 25. He was 28. And we got married after 2 years of dating because he seemed like the perfect man. I mean, he was kind to me. We had plans together. We laughed a lot. And his parents were also cool. Although his mom was always kind of cold at me, but I thought that was normal. That she needed time to get used to me. Sarah was like 22 when we got married, and by then it was already obvious she was the spoiled one in the family. Literally, she could ask them for anything and they'd give it to her. Her mom defended her in everything. Her dad didn't say anything, although sometimes he seemed uncomfortable with the situation. And Jonathan, well, Jonathan acted like Sarah was a princess who needed to be protected from the cruel world. I was working in marketing for a medium-sized company, had a decent salary, and Jonathan worked as a project manager at a construction company. So financially, we were doing well. We weren't rich, but we weren't lacking anything either, and we had managed to save like $50,000 in a joint account to eventually buy a bigger house or whatever we might need in the future. The first years of marriage were pretty good. Honestly, we had our fights like any couple, but nothing serious, and I had learned to tolerate the favoritism Jonathan had with Sarah because, I don't know, I thought that was just how his family was and that eventually things would calm down when she matured. But Sarah never matured. On the contrary, each year that passed she got worse, and by the time she was 27, she was still acting like the world owed her everything. She'd had like 4 different jobs because she quit every time someone told her something she didn't like. She lived with her parents because obviously she couldn't support herself, and basically expected her family to solve everything for her. Jonathan sent her money regularly, like $500 or $600 a month. And when I asked him why he did it, he told me she was his younger sister, and he had to take care of her. And at first I didn't say anything because, well, it was his money too. But over time it started bothering me more and more, because Sarah never appreciated anything, literally saw it as an obligation on his part. Like 8 months ago I quit my job, because the environment had become horrible. My boss was an asshole who made my life impossible. And I decided to take some time to look for something better. And Jonathan supported me, told me not to worry, that we had enough savings and his salary was enough for us while I found something else. And I really appreciated that support, honestly, because not all husbands would react that way. And I started actively looking for work in the meantime, sending CVs and doing interviews, but the market was tough and I couldn't find anything that convinced me. Then Sarah's birthday came around in June. She was turning 27. And her mom organized a party at her house. Nothing too big but elegant, with like 40 people between family and friends. And I obviously went with Jonathan because it was an important family event. The party was normal. You know, food, music, people chatting, and Sarah was at the center of attention as always, wearing an expensive dress. I'm sure her parents bought her, and when it came time for gifts, everyone started giving her their things. And she opened each gift with that fake surprise face she always put on. Like, oh, how nice, thank you. But inside, you knew she was thinking whether she liked it or not. And then Jonathan stood up and gave her a box I had never seen. It was an elegant blue box from an expensive jewelry store, like those stores where a bracelet costs more than a month's rent. And I was like, what is that? Because he had never mentioned he was going to buy her something that expensive. Sarah opened the box and literally screamed with excitement. It was a complete jewelry set, necklace, bracelet, earrings, and ring, all with diamonds or something that sparkled a lot, and it looked super expensive. And everyone at the party started saying, "Wow, how beautiful, Jonathan, you're the best brother in the world." And Sarah ran to hug him and told him, thank you, you're incredible, I love you so much." And Jonathan's mom was also super excited, saying, "Look how generous my son is. How lucky you are, Sarah." I sat there feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach, because that gift had clearly cost a fortune and Jonathan had never told me anything. Not like, "Hey, I'm going to buy Sarah something special," or "How much do you think I should spend," or anything. Literally, nothing. And when I tried to ask him after the party while we were driving home, he just told me not to worry, that he had used money from his personal account and that it wasn't a big deal. And I told him, "Jonathan, that necklace looks super expensive. How much did it cost?" And he got defensive and told me it didn't matter, that it was a gift for his younger sister and I had no reason to get involved. And I told him, "But we're a marriage, we're supposed to talk about these big expenses." And he answered, "Well, if you're so worried about money, why don't you get a job instead of being at home all day?" That hurt, honestly, because I had been actively looking for work, and he knew it. And besides, we had agreed that I would take my time to find something good. But I decided not to fight at that moment because I was tired and didn't want a big argument. But something wouldn't let me rest easy. I mean, the way he had acted so secretive about the gift, and the amount of money he had obviously spent, and the fact that he got so defensive when I asked him. So, the next day, while Jonathan was at work, I decided to check our joint bank account because I had a bad feeling. And when I logged into the bank app, I almost had a heart attack because there was a withdrawal of $25,000 from our joint savings account, the account where we had saved the $50,000 we had saved together over the years, and the withdrawal was from 2 weeks ago, right before Sarah's birthday. I sat there staring at my phone screen, unable to process what I was seeing, like $25,000 from our savings, from our joint money, without asking me, without telling me anything. And when I checked more, I saw that Jonathan had disabled the bank alerts so I wouldn't receive notifications of large movements. I mean, he had planned everything so I wouldn't find out. I started crying right there in the kitchen. I don't know if from sadness or anger or both, but I felt like my husband had betrayed me in the worst possible way. Because not only had he spent our money without consulting me, but he had done everything behind my back on purpose. He had lied to me saying he used money from his personal account, and on top of that, he had insulted me the day before when I asked him. When Jonathan came home from work that night, I had already decided I wasn't going to let this slide. I mean, there were things I could tolerate, but this was too much. So I waited for him in the living room with the bank statement printed in my hand. And when he came in and saw me with that serious face, he asked me what was wrong. And I showed him the paper and told him, "I want you to explain this to me right now." And he turned pale. Literally, I saw his face change. And he started saying, "Well, it's just that Sarah needed a special gift and I wanted to make her happy and I didn't think it was a big deal." And I yelled at him, "How is it not a big deal, Jonathan? You took $25,000 from our savings without asking me. And you lied to me, telling me it was from your personal account. And you also disabled the alerts. So I wouldn't find out? That's betrayal." And Jonathan got angry. Like he got super defensive and told me I was overreacting, that it was both of our money and he had the right to use it. That I didn't have a job, and he was the one supporting the house at that moment, so basically it was his money, and that I was a stupid, irrational housewife who didn't understand anything. He called me that, literally told me stupid, irrational housewife, and I felt something break inside me at that moment because I never thought Jonathan would be capable of insulting me like that, of treating me with such contempt, and all I could do was grab my phone and my keys and leave the house, and I drove to my parents' house crying the whole way. My parents got scared when they saw me arrive like that, all messed up, and I told them everything, about the money, the lies, the insults, everything, and my mom was furious. My dad too, and they told me to stay with them as long as I needed, that I didn't have to go back to Jonathan until he apologized and fixed things. Jonathan called me like 20 times that night, but I didn't answer. And the next day, he sent me messages saying I had to come back home, that I couldn't leave like that we had to talk, but I responded that I wasn't going back until he really apologized and gave me back the money. And he told me he couldn't give me back the money because he had already spent it on Sarah's gift, and that anyway I was reacting in an exaggerated way, that he had the right to use the joint money for his family. Like 2 weeks passed without us seeing each other. I was still at my parents' house looking for work and trying to process everything that had happened, and then Jonathan called me super upset one afternoon, and when I answered, he was almost crying. And he told me he needed me to come back home because he had a serious problem. And I asked him what problem. And he told me his company had lost a big project he was managing, that the client had backed out, and that he had to return a $25,000 advance payment the company had given him, and that if he didn't return it in 2 weeks, they were going to fire him and also sue him. And I was like, "Are you telling me you need $25,000, exactly the amount you gave your sister as a gift?" And he told me, "Yes, please. I need you to help me withdraw the money from our savings account." And I told him, "Jonathan, there's nothing left in that account. You already took half for Sarah's gift." And he told me, "But there's still like $25,000 left. Please, I need that money." And I told him, wait. You already took $25,000 without asking me, and now you're asking me to take out another $25,000 to save you from a problem you created? And he was begging me, saying, "Please, it's an emergency. They're going to fire me. They're going to sue me." And then something occurred to me, and I asked him, "Why don't you ask Sarah to return the gift? I mean, it's a real emergency. She can return the jewelry and you get the money back and solve your problem." And Jonathan was silent for a moment, and then told me he had already asked Sarah to return the gift, but she refused. And I told him, "What do you mean? She refused, Jonathan. It's an emergency. You bought her that gift and now you need it. She has to understand." And he told me that Sarah said it was her birthday gift and she wasn't going to return it, that she wasn't to blame for him having problems at work, and that besides, she had already worn it on several occasions, so she couldn't return it to the store anymore. I couldn't believe it. Literally couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him, "Jonathan, your sister is refusing to help you in an emergency after you bought her a $25,000 gift with money that wasn't just yours?" And he told me he had talked to his parents to convince Sarah, but his mom told him the gift already belonged to Sarah, and they couldn't force her to return it, that Jonathan had to find another solution. And I asked him, "And what does your dad say?" And Jonathan told me his dad was a bit uncomfortable with the situation but didn't want to get involved, that he basically agreed with his mom. At that moment, I knew this had no solution. I mean, Jonathan's family was leaving him alone in his worst moment to protect Sarah, and Jonathan expected me to withdraw the rest of our savings to save him after everything that had happened. And I told him, "No, Jonathan, I'm not going to withdraw that money. That's the money left from our savings, and I'm not going to use it to fix your mistake." And he started yelling, saying, "How could I be so selfish? That we were spouses, and we were supposed to support each other in bad times?" And I yelled back, "And did you support me when you took $25,000 without asking me, and then insulted me, calling me a stupid housewife? Is that support, Jonathan?" I hung up the phone and started crying again, but this time it wasn't just sadness, it was also clarity, because at that moment I realized my marriage was over, that there was no way to fix this, that Jonathan had chosen his sister over me in the most horrible way possible and now expected me to rescue him. That night I talked to my parents and told them I was thinking about getting divorced, and they supported me, told me what Jonathan had done was unforgivable and I deserved to be with someone who respected me, and my mom helped me look for a divorce attorney for the following week. Jonathan kept calling and sending desperate messages asking for the money, and I didn't answer him, until one day he sent me a long message saying he had talked to his parents again and they couldn't lend him the money, that he was going to use his personal savings he had saved for the emergency, and to please come back home so we could talk. And I responded with a very cold message telling him I was glad he had found a solution, but I had already made a decision, that I was going to file for divorce. He went crazy, called me like 50 times that day, sent me messages saying I couldn't leave him like that he loved me, that he was so sorry, that he had been an idiot. But I had already made my decision and nothing he said was going to change it. The next day I went to the lawyer. My mom had recommended and we started the divorce process. And since we didn't have kids, the lawyer told me the process would be relatively quick, that basically we had to divide the assets and reach an agreement about the money in the joint account. I blocked Jonathan on my phone because I didn't want to hear his pleas anymore, and all communication after that was through the lawyers. Like 2 weeks later, Jonathan was served with the divorce papers, and my mom told me he came to my parents' house with all my stuff in boxes, left them at the entrance and asked my dad to please tell me he wanted to talk to me, that he needed a chance to fix things, and my dad told him I didn't want to see him and to please respect my decision. Jonathan tried to come several more times to my parents' house, but they wouldn't let him in. And one day he managed to catch me when I was leaving for a job interview, literally showed up on the street and told me, "Please, I need to talk to you for 5 minutes." And I told him, "Jonathan, I have nothing to talk to you about. Everything is being handled through the lawyers." And he was saying he wanted to try couples therapy, that we could go to a marriage counselor, that he would do whatever it took to get me back. And I told him, "No, Jonathan, this is over. You chose to insult your wife and put your spoiled sister above our marriage. Now live with the consequences." The divorce process lasted like 2 months of mediation and negotiations, and in the end, we reached an agreement where I kept half of everything, including half of what was left in the savings account, and I also received compensation for the $25,000 he had withdrawn without my consent. Basically, I had to prove with bank statements and everything that he had withdrawn that money behind my back, and the judge determined he had to compensate me. Jonathan had to sell his car and use more of his personal savings to pay me what I was owed, and honestly, I didn't feel bad for him at all. The day we signed the final divorce papers was weird, like we were in the lawyer's office, each with our legal representative, and we signed everything barely looking at each other. And when we finished, Jonathan handed me a letter he had written, told me to read it when I was ready, and I took it but didn't say anything to him, just grabbed my things and left. I read the letter like a week later. It was like 3 pages of Jonathan apologizing, saying he had been the biggest idiot in the world, that he had let his family manipulate him his whole life, that Sarah was a horrible and selfish person, and he had been blind to it, that his mom had ruined Sarah with so much enabling, that he should have defended our marriage, that he loved me and would always love me, and that he hoped someday in the future I could forgive him and maybe give him another chance, but that he understood if I never wanted to see him again. I cried reading that letter. I'm not going to lie, because part of me still loved the Jonathan I married, but I knew that Jonathan maybe never really existed. Or maybe he did exist, but got lost somewhere between pleasing his family and forgetting about his wife. I put the letter in a drawer and tried to move forward with my life. I started working as a freelancer in marketing because after all that drama, I realized I wanted more independence and control over my career, and little by little, I was building my own client base. And like 2 months ago, I officially opened my own digital marketing consulting business. Something I never would have done if I was still married, honestly. I know Jonathan is still working at the same company. I found out from mutual acquaintances that he managed to pay the money on time and keep his job, and that apparently he doesn't talk to Sarah much anymore after everything that happened. But honestly, I don't care anymore what he does with his life. Sometimes I think about everything that happened and wonder if I overreacted, if I should have given him another chance. But then I remember how he treated me, how he lied to me, how he withdrew $25,000 from our savings without telling me anything, and then insulted me when I confronted him. And I realize I did the right thing, that a relationship without respect is not a relationship worth saving, and that I deserve to be with someone who sees me as their number one priority, not as a secondary option after their spoiled family. I'm 30 years old. I have my own business that's growing well. I live alone in a small but nice apartment, and I'm learning to be okay with myself. And I guess that's enough for now.